Welcome to the table, and we are glad to be here today with Pastor Jeremy Johnson.
I don't want to be famous on this earth. I want to be famous in hell.
Yeah.
I remember when I took a sabbatical. I had young adults start taking sabbaticals, and it's really it was just kind of weird. I'm like, oh, I don't.
You're like, you need to have a job before you take a sabbatical.
You actually need to work. You know, you actually need to carry the water for some time before you sit down. Christy is hilarious. She always has some kind of challenge, marriage challenge that she's seen online. She's like, we got to do this. So it's this challenge where the husband, can you bench press your wife?
Right.
So I'm bench pressing her and just like trying to prove something. My son's filming, and she loses balance and swings down and hits me.
Slaps you in the face.
No, not in the face. The other side.
Welcome to the table, and we are glad to be here today with Pastor Jeremy Johnson, the only person we've ever had 2 times on the table. So, like, you
true?
are.
Wow.
I was thinking about that this morning. I was like, this guy, we like him
this
so
guy.
much. He is a
Yes.
return voice on
Let's
the time. So thanks for being with us. I know
of course.
that you are here and taking some time away from LA and Fearless and all that's going on to be with us at Revival Nights. And so again, last night, just such a lights
great.
out message, just powerful, people responding. I don't think there was anybody in the place that didn't respond, I think, in that regard.
Yeah.
I feel like we should just push all the chairs back and just, like have one of those altar kind of moments happenings. But really awesome night. And so I want to start just our conversation. A couple of thoughts that I have. I want you to just tell us what's going on at Fearless. Because I was thinking about, just the uniqueness of pastoring a church in downtown LA with your wife and family in that city. So what's happening at Fearless these days?
Yeah, well, we have 2 campuses.
Right.
So we have LA, and we're taking on San Diego as well.
Awesome.
And we're seeing beautiful things happening in both campuses.
Right.
But I think the cool dynamic is it's like the same spirit,
Right.
same house with like, I kind of picture them like children, 2 different ages.
Right.
And, as a church is alive and active, and it's beautiful what God does when people get saved and they're on this journey. And so San Diego's about 100 people that are coming, but these are like, we're in this area that's, like downtown LA.
Right.
It's more of a gritty area of San Diego. If you think of San Diego, you think of vacation and
beach homes and
people, out on
condos
the beach
and boardwalks. Yeah.
This is the hood of San Diego that we're in. And that place kind of chose us. I don't know if our name Fearless kind of draws us to certain areas where
for sure.
maybe people are running, but we started giving out food there. And then because of us giving out food in this coffee shop we found, there's 5 gangs that surround the area, and those gangs have now saw that we're reaching their people and loving on their people. And really it's widows and orphans that come through these, really widows that feed orphans that come through these food drives a lot. And so we've actually got the blessing from the gangs to be in that area. And so we're, it's people getting saved out of the gangs. It's like, I call them, some of the guys, they're businessmen, but they're like, of the undercurrent.
A different kind of business, let's say.
Yeah. So it's beautiful to see them get saved. They're really I almost picture like the Paul, getting saved, these kind of
transformed dramatically.
Like, and anyway, so that's happening in San Diego while simultaneously God is doing things in LA that we only dreamed of. I mean, there was so many years where, and LA has been in 7 different locations, nightclub, event centers, schools, hillsides, where, the beach, wherever we could have church, we had church. And then God has given us this building. And we're about maybe like 5-6 years into this building now. Yeah. We got it in COVID. And so then that was kind of like became a place where we passed out food. And, and so our church kind of, post COVID, it's like it rebirthed anew. It was like a lot of the older people that were coming, just didn't want to get out of their house, didn't want to leave. And so we birthed with these new people that needed a community, needed a place to be. And, and so then those older people came back and it's kind of this new, ever since then, we just knew that, and people are not coming back to church for church as usual, for just a nice service, and then, see you next week.
Right.
They want to encounter God, which is what we want ultimately. But we always were trying to just be 2 steps ahead of our church, not 20 steps ahead.
Yeah,
we're just trying to take them on a journey.
Yeah, that's so good.
And so now it's like, man, the people are like pushing us even further than we're like, oh, you guys want more.
Right.
You guys are not leaving. Like we're like, okay, you can dismiss. Like we feel like God is moving. We're going to linger in this. But, if you need to go, the food truck's open and people are there. Just hours after praying with each other. And these are not just, our faithful older crowd that obviously, that's their passion. These are like 20-year-olds,
right? That's so awesome.
19-year-olds, 16-year-olds, and so it's like a move of God that we're leading, but it's like very carefully we're just trying to steward what we feel like God is doing, especially in our downtown, and then really San Diego is this revival of souls over there, but downtown it's been a special thing as well. Like I have not seen this in our church until now, is how many people are getting saved. Right. It's like every week, anywhere from 50 to 150 people giving their life to Christ. No matter the size of the service, we have 3 services on a Sunday. The first and the last are smaller. The middle one's the biggest. Yeah. So there's always a lot in the middle one, but the first and the last, in proportion to how many people in the room, it's like hands are going up. Wow. I mean, these are people, that I'm like, oh, that person looks a little checked out. You can see from the stage, like who you're talking to. Yeah. But they're just getting saved. Wow. Oh, I didn't know that was a person that doesn't know Christ. Okay. They're getting saved and we're counting the hands. We kind of started that. Yeah. It feels like since we started doing that, which is kind of weird, but like also like a spin on it is every hand counts. Yeah. And so I'm going to count the hands because God sees every hand. Totally. And it's almost like more people want to be a part of that. Exactly. Like, I count me in there. I agree. And so, but I remember the days, Pastor, why I'm so excited about that. I remember the days when it's like, there are no hands. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, why am I doing this?
Such a hard,
why? We're here with just the same group like this. Yeah. We need to be winning. So we got such a big city that needs to know Christ. Bring your friends and try not to get frustrated at the people that aren't bringing their friends or it's not growing. Right. This is no one's fault. All right, Holy Spirit, whatever. And I would say, all right, I see that hand. It was my hand. I see that hand over here on the left. I see that other hand.
I see the other one. I have my kids. Raise your hand.
Raise your hand, honey. Get saved again.
Exactly.
And those days give me, I guess, like, encouragement to these days, right? I don't think I would treat these days. I think I would just treat it as usual if I didn't have those days where I didn't feel like people were hungry or didn't feel like, and it wasn't that they weren't, it was just that I think it was just the continual watering the soil. Yeah. And I think it wasn't even them I was watering, it was me.
So good. Yeah.
And it was like God was working on me and like, can you love who I've given you? Can you love, if this doesn't grow, can you love the people that I have in front of you? I love 12. Can you love the 100, the 50, And so, and in downtown, I could sit all day and blame the area and, because it's not a place where you say, oh, that's a great idea to plant a church.
Let's put a church there. Right.
Yeah, it's just hard. It's like the part, it's like everything is hard. The gospel is hard the real gospel is meat. It's hard to chew. It's hard to digest. And so you already have that. Yeah. If we're going to preach the truth, it's already hard to digest. And most people don't want the gospel.
Right. True.
And so then on top of it, you make everything else hard.
Right.
And so I'm like, parking is $20, per car. You might get mugged while you're down here. Traffic is going to be an hour to get to church.
Right.
Our kids ministry was in the basement on a sticky floor where they just had a party the night before, So then when we got a building, I said, God, please help us make as many of these things easy, right? So now we're like, okay, I say this every Sunday that, hey, the parking's good. We can
Yeah.
now have parking.
Right.
The chairs are comfortable. The coffee's good. The pastor's handsome. You know, I wanted to see if you laugh. You know, but the word is going to
Right.
be difficult.
Yeah. It's
And
good.
to our
So
flesh.
good.
It's going to
Yeah.
be great to
That's
our
so
spirit,
good.
but difficult to our flesh. And I kind of
Yeah.
encouraged them in that in the beginning. And I'm really seeing this group of people that's like, hey, let's become truth literate.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's because I think in our world, I just did this message, and it's called Famous in Hell. And actually I said that at your church the last time I spoke. I want
Right.
to be famous in hell.
Right.
And I got it from my son. I was driving with my son, and he had saw me signing autographs at your youth conference.
Right.
And he said, "Dad, I want your autograph." And I said, he's 11.
Right.
I said,
Enjoy
why?
that,
I
by
said,
the way.
why?
Enjoy that while
Yeah,
they want
enjoy
it.
that. I said, "Why?" I think I ruined it. I said, "Why, son? I'm not famous." And he goes, "But you're signing all these books." I said, "Oh, they just wanted me to sign their book and say hi to them and
Right.
pray for them.
Uh-huh.
I'm not famous like your favorite athlete
Right.
or whatever."
Right.
You know, and the reason why he wanted my autograph is he wanted to sell it.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like precious.
He
He's
wasn't
a
in
little
awe of it.
businessman. He's like,
he's a
this person's
businessman.
autograph. So when famous people come to our church, he goes, "Daddy, can I get their autograph?" He'll ask me
That's awesome.
because he wants to sell it on eBay.
Heck
Or something.
yeah.
Uh-huh.
So I
He's a
said, "I'm not
businessman."
famous like that." And out of my mouth came these words, "I'm famous in hell."
Right.
I don't want to be famous on this earth. I want to be famous in hell.
Yeah.
Another meaning like
Right.
I want to be on hell's hit list because
Yeah.
I'm making Jesus famous on this earth.
Right.
Uh-huh.
Right.
And so that's a series we did
Wow.
recently, but that led us to the 7 churches in the book of Revelation.
Right.
Uh-huh.
And they were famous in hell for making Jesus famous, but even at that,
Right.
Jesus had things they needed to work on.
Exactly.
And
Yeah,
to
so good.
be a church like the church he left,
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
which was the book of Acts church.
Right.
Uh-huh.
Right.
Which probably would have had no, hey, you need to work on this.
Right.
And so it's been an awakening for our church to just look at ourselves with real eyes. And so, you know, we got this move of God, you know,
So good.
people are coming, getting saved, but I'm like, okay, I don't want to build this house on the sand
Yeah.
because most of my church is still building the house of love
Right. Yeah.
on the sand of moral relativism,
Right. Right.
Mhm.
which is your truth.
Right.
And
Mhm.
and
Right.
so we're saying, okay, like this is a time where, you know, we gotta build our house on absolute truth.
Mhm.
We gotta have truth and love.
Mhm.
And how do we do that in a healthy way? How do we have that conversation
Yeah,
with
so good.
millennials and you know, college students that are going to USC and UCLA that
Mhm.
their whole world is
Right.
built on your truth?
Right.
What
Right.
are your pronouns? What are your, you know, these things that we've bought into?
Mhm.
And so how do we do that and in a healthy way?
Yeah.
Mhm.
In a loving way.
Mhm.
And so we've been having those conversations at Fearless.
So good.
Mhm.
And
So
we called
important.
the series Famous in Hell,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is such a radical title.
Yeah.
And I told him, hey, it's not
Yeah.
my fault. It's my son's fault. It came out of our conversation.
That's so good. I love that. And that message
Mm.
in this era, this day, you know, I came across a guy that I was studying with, and he's one of these guys who's just a genius on the Enlightenment, you know, the 12th century Enlightenment. And really what we're living in today is a result of that era of the focus of the Enlightenment in many regards was reason,
Mm.
individualism, and suspicion, skepticism.
Wow.
And so you look at what's that evolved into today. It's evolved into post-Christianity, postmodernism. You don't need religion. You don't need belief. You need science. Reason is within you,
Yeah.
your truth.
Yeah.
And so none of this is new. This has
Right.
actually been around for about 1,000
Oh, yeah.
years now.
Right.
But we're now living in it's grown up.
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
Mhm.
The little fox has become a big fox, and it's just like now in the church, you know, you have candidly more probably deism.
Mhm.
You know, just God is God, and he's not necessarily that interested, but, you know,
Yeah.
they don't think about a spirit-filled. But at the same time, what I'm seeing is this: people are hungry for truth, what you're
Yeah.
seeing,
Yeah.
Mhm.
and they want a real encounter with God, with the presence of God.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? They don't
Yeah,
want
totally.
just a book of rules, a book of do's and don'ts without any power, without any
Yeah.
authority. Just
Mhm.
just follow the rules. You know,
Yeah.
they want, yes, those things are connected to God's character, but
Yeah.
and they're good for us. But at the same time, I think it's one of the things they want. Like,
Yeah.
I want a real encounter with God. I want that transcendence of God. And
Yeah.
it's interesting. I've recently been studying through, and and this is not a slight pro or against any, it just speaks, I think, what's happening in the world today. Second largest sort of denomination affiliation of believers is Pentecostals now, 600 million on the planet. The only second to Catholicism, 1 billion people. And Catholicism has been around for 2,000 years. Pentecostalism is relatively, it's not new, the day of Pentecost, but like the expression of it. And I think that speaks to people's hunger for a real encounter, with the Spirit of God. And I've noticed recently you doing some stuff online. I think you built out a studio, and I on my feed I see your face pop a lot, and it's pretty intense every time I see it. Like this guy is like he's preaching and going at it. So what's going on with that?
Yeah. I sat with a friend, and he just really encouraged me to not miss the opportunity to be in people's life,
where they are,
right where they're at. And I think it was, the reality of YouTube is like a platform that I wasn't using much. And I just, it's just, I was on Instagram a lot. We had a TikTok, but he really encouraged me to get on YouTube as well, because it has like the long form, the short form, the story, and then there's like the people that might actually subscribe there. It's less likely that they're going to unfollow or just be there for a moment. It's a little bit more
locked in.
You can do some discipleship. And so, I just started a Wednesday night live Bible study.
Yeah.
And I think it was perfect timing with this series, because this series was, I had more in my notes than I could get out to the crowd.
Right.
And I needed to know who in my crowd wanted more. Like you don't want to feed, like if you're feeding people steak, you don't want to overfeed them. Like you want to like, okay, I want you to chew on that and like, let's come back next week. I don't want to give you more than you're ready. I want to give you more than you're ready to handle, but not more than you can even swallow. I want you to actually try to live this. And so that Wednesday night gave me a group that was like, oh, Pastor, we'll take Wednesday night.
Yeah.
Oh, Pastor, and then with us, like not having a time limit, right? Like
exactly.
I just have a, on the little screen, I can see how many people are watching. If that number's not going down, then I'm like, well, you guys want more, obviously. Let's talk a little longer, or let's pray. And so it's led to this beautiful little community that I'm building of strength in our church and then from all over the world. Like someone was listening the other day on a boat outside of Maine. I don't know if they had like Starlink, how they were getting internet, but they were on a boat outside of Maine and like feeling suicidal and depressed on this boat, and like somehow found our stream. Someone and I'm saying, hey, share this with your friends. What an easy way.
Exactly.
Paul had to like travel, get shipwrecked, get bitten by a snake, go to prison, and all you have to do is hit a share button. By the way, if you're watching this, all you have to do is hit a share button.
Hit a share button. Yeah.
What an easy way to preach the gospel to your friends and share a clip or share a thing. So I've just been doing that, and those little clips help build into the audience that's like, what is that? Who is that?
So good. I love that.
So I've just been, being faithful every morning from 8 to 9. I spend time working on it. My friend told me, he's like, you can't have your team pick what you want to say at all times. He's like, the best what you want to be out there. So
where you're at,
spend that time. It's worth it. And this guy has 10 million subs on his YouTube. So he actually YouTube pays him. And he doesn't rely on anything else for a financial increase. And so he does that. And he says a lot of pastors are actually doing this and finding that, I'm giving back to my church so much from this service that is paying me from ads or whatever. And so it's just been a passion to increase that, to reach more people. And it's crazy the people you're reaching on there, because you can see in the comments, they're not Christians.
Sure. Yeah.
They're not saved. This person's like, and then I'll be like on there, hey, it looks like you're sticking around. I've seen you on a few comments.
Yes,
be careful. I said to him, be careful.
So
the windows are the eyes to the soul. Be careful. The windows.
That's so good.
The eyes are the windows of the soul. So it's been just a pursuit of like, okay, we have our church and it's awesome.
Love that.
But this is like a way that Paul would have not missed. Paul would have not missed this social media, and I can talk about things on there that maybe in a crowd, I would be, maybe someone would interrupt my speech or interrupt my thoughts, or I can have something more, I guess, scripted so I could say it perfect in a teleprompter way, or just a 30-second prayer. Hey, here's a 30-second prayer for your day. Yeah. And I found those really encourage people. So that's kind of why.
That's awesome.
And
I love that. Well, I mean, statistic wise, I don't know if you have me, Chris, but like the number of hours per day, like 8 hours, something like that with Gen Z, 8 hours on video at this point.
Yeah.
You think about that, like 8 hours. I'm like,
full-time job.
Yeah, seriously. We have a full-time job of social media, and most of it is probably very discouraging.
Yeah.
Even deceptive. I mean, or worthless. I mean,
or even if it's just reporting truth of our world, it's definitely discouraging.
And so the reality is, like, having a voice in that place. I agree. I think, Paul, man, some people are like, oh, why are we, what screens? And I'm like, I think Paul would be using every bit of this.
Yes.
Yeah.
He'd be like, man, if I could be there without having to be, he wrote letters. I mean, he was in places he wasn't. Yeah. Through a letter, and we're seeing that still today. So
I mean, the most radical letter to the church was not just Paul; it's like really John,
the
disciple who Jesus loved. But he said that about himself, really.
Which you love.
So I don't know.
Well, you call
John
yourself
here,
handsome,
but
from the pulpit,
I did
in the same spirit.
I did, in the same spirit. But what he writes to the 7 churches is, you mentioned so they know, hey, this is not old. This is this is not new. This is old, but it's all the way back there.
Exactly.
To those 7 churches, the first church is a church that, they have the law, but they don't have love. They've lost their first love.
Totally.
And then so you have that church, right? I've been at coffee shops. I have my Bible out, and some person comes up, oh, you're a believer. But all they want to do is argue with
exactly.
And I'm like, I thought this was a different conversation. We're here arguing.
I thought we were together.
I
thought we were on the
but
same
it's
team.
like the pride in, I know that the love is gone. They have a foundation, the truth, but they have no house. And so it just feels cold, and nobody comes in. And so then you got the church that has love, but they have no truth. And and the church with Jezebel, the church that's following the spirit of Balaam, which is the spirit of money and using the gifts for fame and wealth. And then you got the inside job, which is Jezebel, which is destroying the church from the inside out, which we see a lot of that now, where it's like, this, you can go to church and you can believe in God and have all these lies in your life.
Exactly.
And, so it's not old. It's not new, it's old.
Right.
And but we fail to read that part, So I see people online, if I'm wearing a hat or preaching or wearing jeans, they'll say like, oh, Paul's going to give this church a letter, and I'm like, well, I mean, John gave this church a letter, and it was way worse than Paul's letters.
Right.
And,
That's so funny.
And it's crazy how people get stuck in the weirdest things, isn't it? And not focus on the
secondary issues. Preferential.
Oh, I had a video. We have a video on our thing that went viral. The 2 videos that have gone viral are not my preaching clips, by the way. And so I'm like, okay, I just need to figure out how to do more of those.
More of that.
The first one is Christy is hilarious. She always has some kind of marriage challenge that she's seen online. She's like, we got to do this. So it's this challenge where the husband, can you bench press your wife?
Right.
And so I'm and you might be able to put this in the feed right here.
Yeah, definitely.
Right here.
Did you do it?
And so I tried it. And so halfway up, Christy, she's not very heavy. So I'm bench pressing her and just like trying to prove something. My son's filming, and she loses balance and swings down and hits me.
Slaps you in the face.
No, not in the face. The other side. The other side. And hits me right in the family future. And I'm like, and it was real. It was not like a fake thing. It was not staged. And so this has gone viral. Fail Army purchased it from us to now. So it has I think 1.3 million views. So that's one clip that's gone viral. And so it was just real. And my son just stayed steady with the camera. He is like perfect. He goes, I got that all on film, Mom and Dad. And I'm just like, And then the second one that's gone viral is my daughter, 5-year-old, came home and said, and her teacher did a salvation call at school, but knew we were pastors. And she lifted her hand to get saved. And she goes, why don't you go to your parents? I know they're going to want to do this.
Mm.
What a teacher. They're my favorite teacher now.
Yeah.
So she came home that day and said, Dad, can I get saved? Can I give my heart to Jesus? And so she'd already done it with her brother one other time. And so then we're like, oh, this is our time to pray with her. So we filmed it, and that's gone viral as well.
Wow.
And it's just so precious and pure. But the reason why I bring that up is some of the comments in there.
Right.
Most of the comments are great, but some of the comments are, me and my wife had a hat on when we prayed for our daughter. We just were, it was Monday, we're wearing a hat. My wife didn't want to fix her hair. I didn't want to fix my hair. And so we're wearing our fearless hats that say love more, fear less. And the comment is not about this little 5-year-old girl giving her life to Jesus. The comment is, I can't believe you're wearing a hat while praying.
Praying with a hat on, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is amazing.
It's amazing.
The stuff that we swallow.
So,
the choke on and what
and I just
swallow.
have to say, shut up, Jeremy. Don't say
You could go viral
Good for
again.
you.
I tell my wife, honey, calm down.
Yeah.
We don't have to block them. Just let the Lord fight for us, or the other people in the comments. Go ahead.
Exactly.
Yes, exactly.
Exactly.
Well, that's the old adage of like, the what is it? The dog barks at the train, but the train doesn't respond.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think there's a point where if you spend your life responding to all of these people,
Right.
I don't have to respond.
we don't,
Yeah.
and it's just like, let them yip and yap and all that stuff like that. And it's different if you feel like there's a genuine engagement with somebody, questions.
Yeah, if they're actually wanting to engage in a conversation. But it's like you said, most people just want to argue.
Well, this train has barked back way too many times. Because you have that loud horn, you can just...
He's like, lay on it, honey.
My wife's like, honey, calm down.
Well, it's just, I think it's so hard not to. Yeah. And I have friends that I sit and watch them. I've even had pastors come at me and I'm just like, bro, like,
can you DM me?
Yeah, I'll send you my number if you want to have this conversation about. And I'm talking people of the same tribe, and I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? Yeah. That like this is what you're going to do in a public sort of environment?
Yeah,
right.
Because like the reality is, I can take you to task with this. Like I just wanted to respond like I said what I said. You know what I mean? Like, but the reality is like think about the people out there watching this stuff and just like what they're. Yeah. They just want to watch the dumpster fire.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, we've all been guilty of it,
For sure.
wanting to.
And I think it's so hard in this to manage. It's a whole new world in that regard of technology for us to manage and how to do this well.
It's disheartening for me to watch the behavior sometimes of pastors in front of people. And I just, that's just not my personality type, but to watch people, really do a disservice to the name of Christ. I think when we engage in the arguing
I think it's this way a little bit. Like sometimes things can be true, but
not helpful. Yeah.
You step on a bear trap, and I go, hey, you stepped on a bear trap. I'm like, well, that's true. What I need is some help right now.
Yeah.
I need someone to open this thing up and help me get out of this deal. And I think sometimes it's just, it's a challenging world. And again, it's that whole probably disconnection through a screen. If I'm face to face with you, there's more of an interaction, more of an empathy and things like that. So I think it's so much. But I want to switch gears a little bit and we'll see how this goes. I was thinking about this. I've never done this with anybody that we've talked with. So since you're back a second time, so your game,
this
like
is bonus round.
You're the dude. We're going to try this out on. So I know a lot of times in ministry, building a church. And by the way, as you're talking, I think about the illustration you used, such a great illustration of watering the mud. You have a vision. It doesn't look like that. I'm just going to keep watering this thing. And obviously Fearless has been a lot of that through the years. Yeah. And people can look at today and they can see a level of effectiveness or success and miss out on those difficulties. But I don't necessarily want to talk about, because I know you can sit and tell all those stories. Because what we do, we talk about churches and things like that. We talk about the good things. Yeah. So I want to give you two questions. And we do this a lot with our staff. So, and you don't have to answer them if you don't want to.
Okay.
We'll just call you a big chicken.
No pressure, but everyone
I'm
is
totally
watching.
putting pressure on you.
Yeah, what kind of coffee did you have today? Let's go. Hey, I'm ready. I'm famous in hell. Let's
That's right. Two questions that I want to throw out to you. And they're not so much, they can be of a ministry orientation, but we do this a lot with our team. We do a lot even with ourselves. But I think so people can see sometimes even just the life that goes into this stuff. Number one, what is your greatest, we call it the rose and the thorn. What is your greatest rose right now? And it can be anything. You don't have to hold back. You don't have to. I think sometimes as pastors, like we had a great weekend attendance, but I'm like, well, I can't really say that because my friends are going to be jealous, or it'll seem like I'm being focused on something. So it can be anything. Just what has really got you excited, and it doesn't have to be church world. It could be anything. And then on the flip side, what's your greatest thorn right now? What's keeping you up? What's creating the angst and the struggle in you? So
awesome. And I think each season I've had a lot of roses and thorns,
Sure.
right? And to kind of go deeper on what was said last night,
right?
The beginning and the end of that scripture says it was the same place where Jesus turned the water into wine, and I think he said that because it was the same miracle done in a different way.
Right.
Because the water into wine were these guys that carried water back and forth to the ceremonial cleansing bins, which were not a place you would make wine, which were dirty. They were where people washed off their sins in their mind. They would be used for, they were huge, massive containers, and they brought this precious water to this, and they were just carrying water, filling these huge tanks up to have wine. But for most of the miracle, they're just carrying water.
Just water.
In fact, even when they went to take it to the king, the question is, when did the water turn to wine?
Right.
And so I imagine them scooping it up. And the other miracle is he's watering dirt.
Right.
When did the seed pop through? When did it all become worth it?
Right.
And the water is literally taken to the head of the table. The water is taken, not the wine.
Right.
They take the water to the head of the table, and when he tastes it, he declares wine.
Right.
So it's water all the way through the miracle until the person must have thought, I'm going to die.
Right.
He's going to kill me.
They're going to think I'm an idiot.
He's asking for wine.
Right.
Yeah.
I've done what I'm bringing him, not just water, the water that's been in the ceremonial cleansing bin.
Right.
It didn't turn to water in the bin. It turned to water in the process of letting the master taste it. So I think there are so many things that still look like thorns, that still look like mud in our lives, that are actually the very thing that God's called us to.
Yeah.
And so I would say, there are ones in my personal life, and I would say, so two categories, personal life and church. So can I give you one in both?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay. So let's start with personal life. Me and my wife, our kids are 12, 10, and 5. So we are, we're running a church from our house. Our churches are in 2 different locations, both an hour from us.
Wow.
So every day we're on Zoom meetings, 5 Zoom meetings, 2 Zoom together, in our offices together in Zoom meetings. So we're running the church together, which I have no greater friend to run the church with me than my best friend, my wife. And I'm guaranteed that as long as the church goes, she's not going to have a new season she's called to, right? If she does, the church is done anyways. So if she has a new season,
we're going to call
the church, we're going to call it quits. So it's like my greatest employee, my greatest disciple, my greatest friend is my wife. And so we're doing that together, and we love doing that together. And it's our dream, our passion. And then we're running our kids 1,000 different directions together. We are professional Uber drivers that don't get paid or tipped. And so, an hour to this, 30 minutes to this, 20 minutes to this, get home 5 minutes, go to this. And so just the other night, my wife told me the thing that you never want to hear, maybe this is 2 weeks ago. I feel like we're like roommates, you know, at times. I feel like we're coworkers. And I just have to be honest with you. Like I don't, you know, and it's not a, if we don't have those conversations, we will have a conversation.
Right. Well, it will.
And so, it was hard to hear that conversation because I feel like we're in that conversation comes when you're extremely working hard. You're like,
for sure,
you don't have any more bandwidth to work harder, you know? And so we had to have that real conversation of like, oh, why do you feel like that? Oh yeah. Now I see why you feel like that. Okay. We just got, you know, and I'm a worker bee, right? I'm just like, get it done. So that was a thorn in both of our rows, right? That our marriage is the greatest thing that we preach about marriage. We know how to have a good marriage. We know, you know, but it was like, okay, like, what does that look like? Like taking time to say hi, not to just the kids and like, you know, it's a real hi. It's like an actual hug, you know, not a pat on the back, what do people that are in love do that roommates don't do?
Right.
Yeah.
And focusing in on those things. We just took the day off and just said, hey, let's just go on a date. Let's like forget, like church can wait. Meetings can wait. We told our staff, we got an emergency. We got to like, we can't meet today. And so, you know, it's those moments that, you know, we have to have those moments and we have to, you know, we have to be able to be honest with each other and go like, we don't want to be roommates. We didn't get in this to be roommates.
Right.
We didn't get in this to be coworkers. We didn't, you know, I'm not just like, we're not just doing a job together. We're in love with each other. And like, if all that went away, like that's what happens in homes, right? Like that's why people get divorces later in life after all the dust settles, after the war settles, then they're like, oh, we have no job to do together. We don't really even know each other anymore. We don't.
You've lost your commonality.
And so I think that was something that as a man, I have to put in certain actions to divide those two things, right? And it is something you have to think about. It's something you have to be proactive in. And remember that when we were dating, I would drive 6 hours and I remember I drove 6 hours and hid in a box for Valentine's Day for an hour and popped out of the box.
You should have recorded that one. That would have been your third viral.
We didn't have video back then. We didn't have Instagram.
You actually just lived our life.
Box. I remember doing these things, and I just, even though we have each other, Sorry, I don't have to win your heart. It's like choosing to win your heart,
right?
And choosing to, not just buying, because now our money's the same, right? It's like if I buy her a gift now, which is her love language, then she's like, "How much did you spend on that?" So it's just different. But you have to like keep, as you guys know, you have to keep finding new ways to fall in love and to not just be roommates, not just be especially when you both work in the same environment. It's like everything is work, everything is, and you need to talk about those things as coworkers, but then you also need to clock out and have like life. And so, we're always just finding new rhythms, right? Each season brings a new rhythm that we have to refigure out. How do we in this season stay in love, not just like each other, but love each other?
Right.
And so that's been I think a rose and a thorn, like something that I have to continue to water, something that at times our marriage feels like water when we believe for wine. But if we keep carrying the water, God will turn it into wine. He'll break, we keep watering the seed. God will birth there's new things that God has for this garden. It's not just, oh, those were the great old days. And now we're just getting old together. And when I see my parents are still married and they are just awkward to be around at times. Like they are so in love with each other. It's like, God, mom and dad, could you stop putting that on your Instagram? Could you stop sending it to the family text? We don't want to see this, but we do, right? So it's like they are in love all over again. And I want to continue to have that in our marriage. And that takes tough conversations that don't feel fun when you have them. Don't feel like, because you've been trying with everything inside of you. You are tired. You are worn out.
Right. Yeah.
I don't want to hear that, oh, it's not good enough. right?
Yeah.
That's not
Right.
enough. I
Right.
need more.
Right.
But it's like you don't have any more. So you have to adjust. You have to switch. You have to go, okay, this has to get less of
Yeah.
me right now.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
has to, because ministry is not going to last if this doesn't,
Right.
you know,
That's exactly right.
continue. And then we realize, okay, a lot of our team is struggling with this. A lot of our leaders are struggling
Right.
with this. So then we're now planning, okay, how do we do a marriage conference and maybe share these things that we're going through and that we're learning how to conquer and God's taking us through
Yeah.
so that our team, you know, doesn't just end up as roommates.
Right.
And then with church, I would say the rose and the thorn is that God is growing our church, but that growth comes with growing pains.
Yeah.
And not enough leaders here and not enough thing. And this is not working now the way we planned it. We planned it mom and pops, which was great for organic,
Sure.
but now it has to move into systems and structures.
Yeah.
And how do we do that? And this person, you know, is not the right person for this level.
Right,
they
right.
were the right person at this level. How do we have that conversation? How do we move them right?
Yeah.
I think that's kind of the thorn now. So when it doesn't grow, it comes with pain.
Yeah.
Right.
But when it does grow, it also comes with pain because the weeds grow with the fruit.
Yeah.
And so you have to now pull the weeds, and then you also have to cut back the bush, right?
Right,
Like
right.
I seen a pastor holding this giant tree on Instagram, and he was like, you know, God prunes. When God prunes, he prunes it all the way back to the knuckles.
Right. Right.
And he's like, he starts here.
Right. Right.
And he says, "Oh, you produced great last season, so I'm going to cut you." Why? Well, why would you cut it? It's
Yeah.
and it's this little stub of a thing that does not look beautiful, has no leaves.
Right.
And he said, "I'm only doing this because next season you're going to produce double. You're gonna." And so it's like the pruning, the pulling, the removing, the fruit brings the pest.
Yeah.
You know, the
Right.
pests don't show up to eat
Right.
leaves
Right,
and
right.
weeds. They show up to eat fruit. So
Yeah.
if you're doing the right thing, you're going to have the haters. You're going to have people saying you're doing it wrong. You're going to have people going, I'm leaving this, you know, in this season of the beauty of preaching the truth. We've had a few people leave our church
Yeah. For sure.
that are stuck in woke ideologies that I love to death, that I hope they would come along in this journey. Like, I'm going to say it as beautiful as I can.
Right.
I'm going to be as honest. I'm going to be as loving, but we got to preach truth.
Right.
And truth
Right.
in love.
Yes.
And those people are just like, no, I've bought into this.
Right.
And and then to find out one of those people is one of our bigger givers. And so then I was sitting there with Chat GPT, because in this season I'm loving using that because it's biased because
Right,
it's been
right.
created by some people, but it's not. People can't say it was my biased,
Right.
right? So I like just putting stuff into it, seeing what it says. And I said, you know, to it, why would a pastor not preach truth? If he knew the truth or she knew the truth, why
Right.
would they not preach that? You
Right.
know, in love, right? Truth in love. And Chat told me back, well, there would only be two reasons. It said you would only not do it because you don't want to lose people that come. And I think that would be one of my big, dilemmas at times, because I know some of the people that come are not going to be able to handle this.
Right.
And they want me to say a certain thing, not what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And then that you would also lose givers that come. And then it got quiet in my office when I heard those two things. I thought those are the two reasons why ultimately I would hold back on any of this truth that would set people free.
Right.
Right.
And God just really convicted me, and He said, "Those are your reasons." You know. And I said, "All right, Lord." And He said, "If those are your reasons, then this is more of a business than a family,
Right.
Yeah.
because you would never treat your kids with those thoughts."
Right.
Yeah.
And so I said, "All right, Lord, this is not going to be a business." And so I think the crazy thing is we lost a few people by me preaching truth, and a few givers, which we call them fearless partners, which, we have bills we have to pay.
Sure.
We have staff we have to feed and so that's, as the leader, those are things you think about,
Yeah.
and have to think
Right.
about.
Yeah.
And so, but my team told me, "Pastor, we lost 5 partners, but we gained 7.
Right.
and we lost this much finances, but we gained this much.
Right.
And so I just felt like, all right, Lord,
Yep.
like, even though if we lost everything and you called me to preach
Right.
truth and do that, let's go.
Yeah.
Like, let's be real.
Yeah.
But it was so much the rose in the thorn, you know?
Yeah.
And then the funny thing is, a lot of times those people that leave will end up coming back.
Right.
For sure.
Because if you build your house on the sand,
Right.
Right.
when the storm comes is when the two
Yes.
houses will show their proof, right?
Yes.
So you don't know the houses are built on different foundations. They both are, the walls are love. The roof is love.
Yeah.
They both have love. But you only know where that they've built on truth when the storm comes.
Yeah.
Right.
Because when the storm comes, it will crash earthly love.
Right.
True.
You know, phileo love.
Right.
Yes.
It won't crash agape love that can only be built on truth.
Right.
So anyways, a long answer to your short
that's
question.
good. That's good.
I think those are my roses and thorns, is preaching on truth,
Yeah.
watching our church grow and shrink, but dealing with the growth. I'm like, God, help us in raising up leaders, right? So I think that's I was talking to you just a few minutes ago about planting churches. We have more cities that need more churches, and we have more heart to reach more parts of California. And people want to do it, but it's like, unless you have that leader that can handle it.
Right.
And then you look at like, oh gosh, I haven't been raising up that leader.
Yeah.
I've been raising up a lot of leaders.
Right.
But that leader is a special leader that requires a lot more attention from me.
Yeah.
Right.
It's challenging.
And a lot more pulling that leader into my life. And how do you even find that leader? They can't just be a young college student. They might need to be married.
Yeah.
They might need to have a family. They might not even know that they have a call to ministry.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
And so instead of bringing leaders from the outside in and having a big paycheck, which we never do at Fearless, to offer them and move to LA from Texas or something, it's like we got to raise them up from the inside. So that's been a challenge, a thorn.
Takes time.
But yeah.
Takes a lot of time to do that sort of thing.
Yeah.
You know, it reminds me, and it seems like listening to you, Jeremy, like just, and I think we could totally identify with the moments of marriage where you're just like, you know, I remember times my wife looking at me going like, hey, this is not going to work. Like, this is not going to cut it. You know what I mean? And we're like, okay, so we got to sit down and figure this thing out. And I think sometimes we're so concerned about fragilizing our spouses. Like, I can't tell them the truth because, well, he's busy and he's tired and he's this and he's that. But without that truth, there really is no freedom. I mean, there is no a greater level of intimacy, you know, is honesty.
Yeah.
The truth and love.
Yeah. And so
it's and my wife equally, she would encourage me when I'm like making that change, right? Because she's like,
she sees it.
Yeah. And I'm like, well, I actually, as a man, I don't have the same needs that you have.
True.
And so I have to think, okay, maybe I didn't feel like that, but I see how you felt like that. And she's like, wow, you learn quick. I'm like, yeah,
I can be taught.
The good news is
I can't. It's like a whole new man. I was just like, I wish I would have said this sooner. I said, yeah, let's learn quick.
It's
like
awesome.
I want to be a quick learner, just like I
so
want
good.
people in my life to be quick
For
learners.
sure.
So anyways, I think
but
if
you
you're
know that does actually change as you get older.
Yeah.
He's way more sensitive now than I am.
Okay,
Like-
there you go.
no,
so he might have to have that
this
My
conversation.
estrogen is off the charts.
This truly does happen.
Too
like,
much tofu.
That's what she's saying.
It's
No, it really does.
It really is proven.
It does.
And you know, I mean, he said to me this last week, because we're both in school, running the church, kids still living at home. And he said to me the other day, because we kind of turn into study buddies now, like we're both
we
sitting
do homework get together
on the end of the couch, you know, doing homework.
Yeah.
And he looks at me and he said, you know, we need to have more fun together. We need to play together more. And
You guys need to try the push-up challenge. Maybe even
I could
today.
do it.
You wearing pants?
I was straight up going to do
today,
it.
right
But
here.
I am
Get the
not.
camera out.
I am.
he's gonna
Just
I will do it.
protect yourself.
make
I'll do
sure
it.
that my arms are like this.
Tie her arm. It was like arms like this until.
Yeah, until
But it changes.
seriously,
So
there's going to be.
you know, so
It
now
does change.
Yeah.
So he's you know, now,
No, I think it does, and
It really
I do
does.
think that there's something to age in
Absolutely.
that. You know, I'm
Yeah.
50 now, and not that it's not old, but it's
Sweetie, you're 51, but who's counting?
51 is old.
Oh my gosh!
First thing you do is you
This
forget how
happens
old
to
you
me
are.
all-
So,
Senile now. man.
but by any stretch of the imagination, I feel like I'm in better shape. You know what I mean, than I've ever been.
Yeah.
But it's just like you start looking at things differently. Even church. I have a guy in our church who's a pretty well known psychologist, written a lot of books. I mean, people would know his name, and he's just the sweetest guy. And he'll come up to me and go, "Hey, you taking time off? You going out with your wife? You hanging out?" And he has no reason. He's just sitting in our church, like he's on the end. He's in his 70s now, and he looks at me, and I say, "Yeah, I'm taking this. I'm going to be gone for these couple weeks or whatever." And he goes, "Good." He goes, because he looks at me and he says, "Because you know what? We won't mean to, as the church, but we will kill you."
Wow.
And he just constantly reminds me. He goes, he actually told me, he's like, "I actually like that you," I'm like, "I don't know how to feel like." He goes, "I like that you need to be a little greedy with that stuff." And I'm like, "Well, no, I don't want to be greedy." He's like, "No, you need to understand that saying yes to that sometimes means you'll have to say no to the church. And saying yes to the church all the time will cause you to say no to your wife, your kids at times when, and especially in your world where your kids are so active and so gifted in so many things, and it would be a challenge. I mean, and there's a grace for it, and we can do this. I don't want to. I think sometimes people just like they stop carrying the water because they're like, this not working out. I'm done, and I'm like, no, you got to stay with this, but also understand God will meet you in those places. But I do think like, man, in my 50s, my kids are like, my kids will sit around. It's funny because I have older kids who are 27, 20, 26, 27. And then I have the youngest in our house is 18. So they're all like adults, kind of. And
but he's a senior in high school.
Right, with mostly developed prefrontal cortexes, but not all the way. And so, but my kids will sit around. No joke. My kids will sit around with each other. Funniest conversation. And they were all sitting around, I think, at our backyard in our like a hot tub or something. They were sitting around just talking to each other. And my oldest two were looking at my youngest one going, "Your parents are way healthier than our parents were." And I'm like, that is true. You know what I mean?
It is so true.
They were literally like, your parents are way better than our parents were. And I'm just like,
That's
yes.
hilarious.
I mean, I'm glad that you could see that and you
You're
could say
so
that.
lucky.
Because I'm like, that is true. And we're like, it is. And I think you do. Like you just.
And we've had to go back to our older two.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
And the third one. And apologize for a lot of things because nobody was having these conversations about
10 years ago, 15 years
and
ago.
Rest and
no, it was just
health.
All for the call, you know.
Yeah,
and
it was,
just drag your kids along.
Everybody's going to hell, and you better work 24/7 to make sure they're not.
And I think that's there is an urgency to the call for sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And let me say this, like to that, if they're a young adult out there watching, and you're thinking, "Oh, I need a new vacation. I need a new thing." That's not really what we're talking about.
Right.
We're the reason why Paul tells you, like, hey, if being married is another weight. Being having kids is another weight.
Right.
And so that years of singleness, I could work different,
absolutely,
and rest different
absolutely.
than now.
Yes.
And should.
Yeah. I mean, biblically, if you're
it's
single,
a time where you could go.
Well, biblically single, you're more able to give yourself to the concerns and desires of the Lord and ministry, whatever that might be.
I remember when I took a sabbatical, I had young adults start taking sabbaticals, and it's really it was just kind of weird. I'm like, oh, I don't.
You're like, you need to have a job before you take a sabbatical.
You actually need to work. You actually need to carry the water for some time before you sit down. And so I think there's a balance, right? And like, I don't want someone to hear us and think that we're just saying also, like, hey, just you need to tell your pastor, like, hey, I need a because I think the greatest rest is His presence
for sure.
And you cannot burn out. Here's what I say: you cannot burn out in the fire. You can only burn out either outside of the fire. So God is a consuming fire, and so it's not protecting ourselves from God.
Right.
Correct.
It's protecting ourselves for God.
Yes.
And so, like, when we're talking about rest, we're talking about protecting saying no to things so we can be in God's call.
Yeah.
And his first call is our family.
Right.
His first call is our marriage. His first, so that's our first ministry. So really, when you're protecting your call for your family, for your marriage, when you're saying, hey, I can pray for 20 people, but hey, I got to get home to I want to be there tonight with my family so I can wake up in the morning. You're protecting it for your greatest ministry, right? And so I think learning that, but as a young adult, I was able to rest different. Then as I aged and was now, people were leaning on me, and if that makes sense.
Absolutely. No, and I think even with your kids, I mean, we have 18-year-olds as our youngest. They drive themselves everywhere, and we don't do that taxi thing anymore, which is an incredible
Each
blessing.
season demands a different style of working and resting, and really there is. So when I say there's no burnout, it's like I've only burned out getting too far behind God. When he said, do this, and I didn't do it, I burned out there because his grace is not there. And I burned out getting too far ahead of God. I added a time to it. I mean, when we planted the church, it was like I watched Stephen Furtick and what he did, and it was 5 years in. Like he took over a stadium, and I saw that in my head. Oh, we're taking over Staples Center 5 years in. And when we didn't do that, and it was 100 people 5 years in, and we're in a nightclub, and we don't have enough funds, and we don't have a staff, and we're not even on salary, and we're working another job, and I'm like, God, where are you? And God's like, you put your own time. You burned out because you put your own time to what I didn't give you a time limit on. And so I think we burn out those two places, right? Most leaders burn out in front of God, adding things to the picture. Like if God told you you're going to have kids, you put when you're going to have kids, and it's not happened yet. So you're just like mad, frustrated, burned out. Where you at, God? I've been giving, tithing. We put a time limit on when it's going to turn to wine.
Exactly.
And God didn't say when.
We
he
wanted
said,
our
take
time.
it to the master. And when he tastes it.
So true. Yeah, I think about burnout, and there's a recent study we went through with our staff that talks about from a spiritual perspective. I absolutely agree with what you're saying. But they say burnout is a cause of three things. It is, and it's you said it. It's really the same root. Whether you look at it from a practical perspective, it has to do with do you remember what the first one was? Do you guys remember what that first one was?
Lack of connection.
It was relationships. It was relationships, meaningful work, and mission drift are the three things that typically in a practical sense leads. So when you talk about mission drift, getting ahead, getting behind, you know what I mean? It's what creates burnout for us. When you talk about the relationship piece, like the people in your life, that keep perspective. Like, no, it's okay. Like, it's your people that probably have come along in your life going like, no, Jeremy, you're doing the right thing, even though you're not in the Staples Center. You're in God's place and God's time. There's encouragement. We keep those people in our lives. And when I talk about like rest, I think what we're talking about is like rhythm more than
that's it.
More than, because that's what creates the rhythm for relationship, rhythm for community, rhythm, and this because you're musical. Rhythm is about knowing when to be off as well as when to be on. You've got those guys that they're just always on. You're like, no. I need a different rhythm here. Because it's going to enhance. And sometimes it's like, no, we're going to be off right now. And I think the extreme of that, and when we talk about this younger generation, like, well, I just need a sabbatical. Maybe, but maybe not. Maybe you just haven't developed a rhythm that is sustainable. And I think about this issue, Romans says that each of you should examine yourself by the measure of faith that God has given you. I think churches have measures, and not every measure is the same. And I know that sounds like, but I want my measure to be that measure. And maybe that is something God will do in time. But I think if we really can understand, and I think the way I look at other churches and I go, man, they're just gargantuan, just doing amazing things, and they're just loving on a group of that Eugene Peterson's never wanted his church to be over 300 people. He would plant churches at 300. Now, granted, I'm like, really, like this guy's writing Bible translations and he's writing books and all of this, so he has this incredible influence. But yet his church, he's like, he never wanted over 300 because he would literally plant a church at 300. So that's the urban legend, anyways. I'm not sure if it's exactly as accurate as all that. But it's a measure. And I think when I came to peace with it, I go like, Lord, I just want to fulfill my measure. I want to stand before you one day and go, I did everything I was supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
And things that are outside of my measure are going to cause mission drift.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to cause, meaningless work. Cause when you're doing meaningful work,
yeah.
When you're with that one and you're like, this is not the masses, but it's making a massive, your son, your daughter, any of your children, this is going to make a massive difference.
The ones that will be there that last breath you take.
Yeah. And hopefully at the end of your time with them, your kids will all look and say, we all had great parents. You didn't have better parents than we had.
Yeah.
But probably
I did this illustration at church and it came back up in my feed and I thought that's it, right? Like it's, for young adults that are burned out, right? And it can happen, right?
Right, sure.
And even me, right? It's not that the weight that was added was too much.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the Sunday morning for an hour that you served that really broke you.
It's not.
It was that you picked up all these other weights of
Yeah.
society and stuff. And then God said, actually, here's a weight I have for you.
Exactly.
It's only 10 pounds.
I have
Can you handle it? And they're like, and we're like, oh yeah, I could if I wasn't carrying, trying to be everybody's hero, trying to be right all the time, trying to go out with
Please
this
people.
group, please this person, do this, be ahead of the Joneses, have this by 21, be a millionaire by 25. Like if I wasn't carrying all these things, then I could easily carry that, God, that 1 hour. So I always try to help our young adults go like, yeah, you are burned out, but it's not because of your 2 hour serving.
No.
That's not what you need to, if you cut that out, you're still going to be burned out.
Exactly right.
Because
nothing changes.
You're not burned out from that. You're burned out because last night you should have said no to going out to the wherever it was and get sleep. You should have said no to taking on a third job. Because right now is not your season to be flowing. It's your season just to make it. And that's going to be how God does it. And so I think that for myself as well, like with ministry, even with our church, I'm very strict with our church now on we are only going to do what God tells us to do.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not going to be a man-driven church, although we love men and women.
Sure.
Yeah.
We're going to be a God-driven church. And everything that is a need is not God's urgency. Like, even though, we want to meet needs, just because you have a need, we're not going to start a ministry in that or do this and that.
Right. So
we're going to be here for the long haul.
Yeah.
So we're going to just be a God-driven church. Like there was a team wanting to start a college ministry.
Right.
And I'm like, well, our whole church is college students.
Yeah.
So like you could just start a ministry with our church, but Sunday morning is our college ministry.
Right.
And I said, until God speaks to us to do that.
Right.
Well, there's a need, Pastor. Well, there's a lot of needs. Which one do we meet first?
Right.
And so we're going to make sure we're doing what God says us to do. And if we get ahead of that, we're going to burn out.
Yeah.
If we get ahead of that, try to hold that, we're going to crumble.
Yeah.
The whole thing's going to crumble.
Yeah.
So we want to carry what he's called us to carry so we can get to where he's called us to get to.
I love that. I think, don't you think that clear mission, purpose, vision, when we talk about mission drift causing burnout, when you have a clear picture of what God has spoken over your life, you said it last night, the vision that you see, it's what well, I mean, Proverbs says it restrains you. It without vision, people perish. You're unrestrained. You start picking up these other things because you're trying to be all things to all people and trying to find solutions that God's like, I don't. And I think if we can teach people like really learn to hear from God and not be exclusive. Don't use boundaries in a weaponized way. Like, that's my, like, I get so worn out, like, oh man, it's like using sabbaticals when you don't have a job. I'm like, well, your life is a sabbatical at this point. So probably you need work.
I'm
like,
so glad you're on the beach.
Yeah. Like, I mean, you probably need a job because,
I mean,
I tell people all the time.
If you don't work, you don't eat.
Exactly. Well, I tell people like
idle.
To have Sabbath, you have to work.
Yeah.
If you don't work, you don't have a Sabbath.
God himself only took one
exactly.
day off.
And it's like, it's like, there you go. But I think mission drift and the vision of people is what sometimes creates that. And it's so easy in a church of any size. I'm sitting here listening to you and you've been around large churches. You've been in large churches. You know that these issues don't go away because of the size or the number of campuses. They just get get more complex. They just they're multiplied. Like, oh, I got to find 5 new people, versus one. But I think I think that's where it's so important as a church. We take on that heart of emptying our cup. I heard a guy say one time, empty your cup. My job is to empty my cup, not fill yours, because otherwise we're driven by every need in the world. Like I got to fill theirs. I got to fill theirs. And you deplete yourself, your church, your resources. And my job is like, this is what I have. This is the measure God's given me. This is the vision God's given me. So if it's, if that's not a college ministry is not in that, what I have to offer or what God's saying, then man, it's okay. Cause God will raise up somebody else's
and
measure
it's timing
to do that
too, right? God may like a month from now to, and it's not a control thing. It's like, let's keep our church focused.
Exactly. There's a time for everything. Scripture says, and I think that's if we can understand that and stay in that sweet spot, stay in that pocket with the Lord and His presence, and we've seen a lot of people that have burnt out over the years and made really bad decisions in those moments,
and people don't want us to burn out.
They
don't want us. They want us to be shining stars. They want more heroes that finish the race strong.
So good.
And so we're the only ones that will protect our own call. You know?
So good.
Yeah.
Well, Jeremy, it's been awesome. Anything else you want to ask, babe? Or are you good? Or
I'm good.
Yeah.
I am.
You're good.
You
got your Celsius. You got a couple more podcasts
I'm just
today.
making it through this week.
I think the last thing we should do is we need to see if you can do the push-up.
Okay, I'm down.
I'm
down on the table.
On the table.
That's getting a little weird. I don't know. I think the camera,
we're gonna add a layer of danger. To this
maybe
thing.
I think we could. We could put the mic right there.
Yeah, I'm gonna do a layer of danger on it. So. All right, we're gonna do this.
Oh my gosh!
So
I'm gonna
do this.
happen.
I can do this in a heartbeat.
Maybe you should drink some of the Celsius.
I'm good.
Wait, gosh.
Okay, you gotta lay down. Okay.
Oh, this is hilarious.
Wait. Let me get. Oh, let me get.
Apparently more junk in the trunk. So.
You're gonna.
Wait, okay, you're not.
Maybe it's impossible in this.
Did you see that?
We got it.